Hi, I'm Sharon Sobel. This is my model, Andy Prescott. We are in the makeup studio of the Weber Fine Arts Building at University of Nebraska at Omaha. And today we're going to be looking at basic makeup application techniques, including the application of foundation, contouring with highlight and shadow, and basic natural health and beauty. And these all combine to what is sometimes referred to as a basic corrective. Now, Andy has already washed his face and used moisturizer, and he's also shaved. And I have washed my hands with antibacterial soap. It's very important before you put on your makeup, and especially putting on somebody else's makeup, that your hands are clean. It's also important to remember that if you have acne or any kind of skin allergy, that you talk to a dermatologist before using any kind of makeup or applying anything to your skin. All right, so today we're going to be using a cream-based foundation. Okay, can I grab this first and then since you're going to cut it in? Okay. Today we're going to be using a cream-based foundation. Since this is not Andy's own makeup and this is makeup that I use for a number of people, what I'm going to do is use a palette knife and remove some and place it onto a palette so that I don't put it on his face and then return my finger into the pot of makeup. And it's also a good idea to do this for your own makeup so you don't keep transferring bacteria from your skin into your makeup. We've already determined that this is the appropriate color for Andy. So what I'm going to do with my clean hands is I'm going to dot the makeup all over his skin, leaving a little bit of room in between. You don't have to cover it completely because there is a little bit of room for spreading around, and we're just going to cover his entire face. We're going to make sure we get close to the hairline. Now I'm going to ask Andy, do you wear contact lenses? Great, so I'm going to be very careful still, even though he doesn't wear contact lenses. I'm going to make sure that I put the makeup on his eyelids and in every little spot that we can find in the face. And so this process is probably going to take a little while. You want to make sure that you don't put on the makeup too thin, but you do want coverage. So you can see that there is still quite a bit of area on his face that doesn't have makeup. And so now I'm going to use a latex-free sponge, and I just got this at the corner pharmacy. And we're going to very lightly and gently glide the makeup over his skin. It's very important that you don't grind the makeup into the skin. You want to glide it across. You're actually moving the makeup around. That's why you apply it with just a little bit of density to it so that you have enough that will glide across the skin. You want to make sure that you get onto the beginnings of the ears. If your ears are very red, you might want to blend a little makeup onto it. You want to get down onto the neck and blend it out. Now you want to think about your costume. If you have a high neck costume, you don't have to go down very far and you don't want to get your makeup onto the costume. If you're having a low V-neck, depending on the difference of your face color and your neck color, you might want to continue the makeup all the way down the neck, or you might just be able to blend it out. I'm going to turn Andy just a little bit so I can apply the makeup or glide the makeup over the rest of his face. Now be careful, you're scowling a little bit there. Can you relax there you go, relax your eyebrows. Perfect. They're going to cut that. It's important to get the makeup over your lips as well. Okay, and you can open your eyes. And you can see we have a nice, even, and smooth application of Andy's foundation makeup. When using theatrical makeup, highlight, or a lighter color, is painted onto the areas of the face that protrude, and shadow, a darker color, is painted onto the areas of the face that recede. We always leave an area of foundation or base tone in between the two, in between the highlight and the shadow, and that helps create a smooth or soft edge, which aids in the contouring of the face. So, the first area that we're going to contour is the forehead. Now, the forehead, especially on men, will show a protrusion of a ridge very near the hairline and then one right above the eyebrows. There's also an indentation in between. So it's sort of like a mountain range with a valley and then another mountain range. We also have the temples on either side which recede. So we're going to start by applying highlight onto the brow bone. We'll start with the upper brow bone. And you can see on Andy, or if you can't see it, oh, damn. We're going to start by applying highlight and shadow to the forehead. The forehead has two ridges, one above the other, with a depression in between. It also has temples, one on either side, and that is a receding area. So for the ridges, we're going to apply highlight in a sort of a bow shape, and we're starting the upper highlight very near the hairline. And when you're applying your highlight, it usually will stop at about the arch of the eyebrow. It's a little subtle on Andy here, but you can see that there is a little bit of a point at the center of his eyebrow here. And if you hold your brush right up there, that's about the end of where you want your highlight, because that's where the forehead starts to turn back into the temple. So I've applied highlight on the upper ridge, and I'm also going to apply highlight on the lower ridge, and I'm doing this right above the eyebrows. Now I'm going to clean off my brush because I'm transferring from highlight to shadow, and in between the mountain ranges or the ridges, I'm going to apply an area of shadow, and I'm going to try to get it on there not too dark, and I'm going to try to mimic or parallel the shape of the highlighted ridges. You'll notice that I've left some areas of foundation in between. This is what I mentioned earlier, and this is going to help us create soft contours. We also want to apply shadow to the temples, and we'll apply this in a vertical manner. And you'll stop before you get to the cheekbone. So you really won't go below the line of the eyebrow. And you can apply the shadow for the temples right up to the hairline and right down to the eyebrow. I'm going to turn Andy just a little bit, and I will do the shadow on the other side of his forehead. And I learned from turning Andy that I wasn't quite symmetrical on this side. So I will use my sponge to pull off. I put on a little bit too much highlight. And the nice thing about your non-latex sponge is that you can use it sort of like an eraser if you put on a little too much anywhere. So now we have the two rows of highlight, the shadow in between and the shadow on the temples. The next thing we need to do is blend. Now, blending is a skill that is very important to learn. Some people blend across the application of the makeup. I find that this creates a very unsmooth, jagged looking blend. I like to blend in the direction in which I applied the makeup. So what we're going to do for the highlight is we're going to blend, or we're going to remove a little bit of the makeup on the upper edge and a little bit of the makeup on the lower edge. We want to keep the center of your swath of makeup as light and bright as we can so that we go from a mid-tone to a highlight, then back down to a mid-tone. And we're going to do the same thing on the lower highlight. We're going to just blend out the edge, and this is creating a soft edge. So you can see now that you almost can't tell where the highlight ends and the base tone or the foundation tone begins. I'm going to clean off my brush again because now I'm going to work on the shadow. Now the shadowing on the forehead, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to blend out the upper edges into the foundation tone so that we really have a sense of highlight to mid-tone to shadow. And then we're going to blend out the lower edge into the foundation or base tone, which will then lead us back into the highlight. Now I think I got my highlight a little close, so I will just pull back on it. I'll pull a little bit of it off and leave a little of the foundation color in between. So now you can see we have a sort of undulating highlight, shadow, highlight, base tone on the center of the forehead. We can now blend out the shadow on the temples, and this is very easy. You just want to make sure that it's even and that you're not removing all of it. And as I'm working with this contouring and highlight and shadow, I'm also making sure that I'm brushing lightly and gently. I'm not grinding the makeup into his face. So we're going to turn Andy just a little bit again. And here I'll go to the other side and just carefully smooth out the shadow, making sure I don't get into the cheekbone area, and just blend it down to a neutral foundation tone and make sure that my shadow on this side has blended out. We'll turn him back. And here we have highlight and shadow to contour the forehead. Next, we'll be contouring the cheekbones. You can see that Andy's cheekbones start just about at the top of the ear, and they angle down slightly towards the center of the face, so in a diagonal manner like just about that. Also, if you touch your own cheekbones, you'll see that they end at just about the corner of the eye. So when we apply the highlight and shadow, we really want to stop at about this place. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of highlight, and I'm going to start. Now I can't start back at the ear. I've allowed Andy to keep his sideburns, and in a contemporary play he would probably be wearing them anyway. So we're going to start right at the sideburn and angle the highlight, and you'll notice I'm using my widest brush. We're angling the highlight slightly down, and we're stopping just as we get to the corner of his eye. Next, I'll clean off my brush, and I'm going to put on some shadow. Now, as we did with the forehead, when we placed the shadow, we made sure that we left an area of foundation or base color in between. So here's the bottom edge of my highlight. I'm going to leave a little room, and I'm going to start putting in the shadow. So in a way, it's almost like having 3 even stripes of highlight, foundation, and shadow. Okay, you can already start seeing how the cheekbone is protruding outward and the underneath part is sticking into his face. So now I'm going to clean off my brush, and I'm going to I'm going to blend the top edge and the bottom edge of the highlight, Again, I'm not wiping it all off. I'm trying to leave as much in the center as possible, but I'm wiping off some of the makeup from the top and bottom edges so that it will blend into the foundation color in between that middle line. I'm going to clean off my brush one more time, and I'm going to now blend the shadow by going in the direction which I applied across the top of the shadow and now across the bottom of the shadow. And you can see that this is extending back towards the ear. And the shadow and the highlight are ending at about the same point. And this is a contoured cheekbone. I'm going to take a quick break so I can apply makeup to Andy's other cheekbone. Next, we're going to contour the jawline. The jawline, depending on whether you have a very square or a curved jawline, will be either an L shape or a curved shape. Andy has sort of a squared off jawline, so we're going to follow that shape. It will start in front of the earlobe and come downward and turn a corner and continue onto the chin. So the part that sticks out is going to be highlighted, and we will use the wide brush and use a little highlight and follow the shape. We're going to stop before we get to this separate area where the chin is. And go up as far as you can until you come to your sideburns, if you're a man. And if you're a woman, you can probably continue up a little bit higher. So here I have put in the highlight. Next, I'm going to clean off my brush, and we're going to leave a little bit of foundation in between, but this is a very tight spot because it turns back very quickly. You've got your jawline showing outward, and your neck or your chin is going to be underneath it. So we're going to be very closely applying the shadow and leaving as much room as we can, but it's going to be a tight area to blend, so you're going to have to really practice on this. You also might need a little help from a friend when you get this far back on your face. You might not be able to see where you're applying the makeup. So just be very careful and work with a partner if you can. So we've got the highlight and the shadow, and now I'm going to blend my highlight up into foundation, and the same down below. Again, this is that very tight area of blending. Once again, notice that I am not blending across the line, I am blending in the direction in which I applied the line. Now I'm going to clean off my brush and blend the shadow as closely as I can to the highlight without getting it mixed in with the highlight. And we're going to blend it into the neckline. And what this shadow does, it'll help support the highlight so that the jawline will protrude and look three-dimensional. And this is a contoured jawline, which I will take a break from the camera and apply on the other side of Andy's face. Now we're going to highlight and shadow Andy's chin. Now you may notice that Andy has a subtle cleft in the chin, and I've decided that for his character, whatever it is that he's playing in this play, we're going to emphasize the cleft in his chin. So to do that, we need to think about the chin as actually two separate spheres with an indentation in between. So I'm going to use the tip of my finger and dot a little bit of highlight onto each side of the cleft. Now I'm going to use a brush to apply shadow in a semicircular manner, surrounding and underneath each of the highlights. And also going slightly into the separation. So you can already see how that's starting to emphasize the cleft of the chin. Now I'm going to clean off my brush and use it to start blending the outer edge of the circles. And I might even just tap it a little with the pad of my finger, and that will help blend it out as well. Clean off my brush, go to the shadow, and start blending in the edges of the shadow that are around the circle and then the underneath, and that will actually blend down into the under chin area. And there should be a little bit of area of foundation in between, and what we have here is a contoured cleft chin. The nose has three distinct parts. First, there's the bridge of the nose, then there's the tip, and then the nares. So we're going to focus first on the bridge of the nose. Now, if we wanted to create a rounded nose, which we'll look at in another tutorial, we would treat the bridge and the tip of the nose as two separate units. But what I want to do is just create one simple, straight highlight on the nose. So we're going to start right about in between the eyebrows, and we're going to use a medium brush and apply some highlight down on the nose, and we're just going to stop right before we get to the tip. And this is just going to be a very simple, straightforward corrective highlight. And we're not actually correcting anything, we're just emphasizing what's already there. Now what we want to do is I'm going to use a wider brush for the shadow because we need to support the highlight with shadow on either side. Parallel to the highlight, we're going to apply a swath of shadow, and then we're going to curve around the nair of the nose and then create a sort of a triangle of shadow. I'm going to spin Andy around. We're going to look at the other side, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to do a parallel line, go around the nair of the nose, and create a triangle. And in please cut what I just said, because it didn't mean anything. Okay, now we're going to look at Andy. He's got his highlight in the center and the shadow on either side. I think I brought the shadow in a little too close to the highlight, so I'm just going to pull it back with my sponge. So don't be worried about making little mistakes like that, because they're really easy to fix. And now what I'm going to do, using my medium brush, I'm going to blend out the outer edges of the highlight. And I'm going to blend the edges of the shadow, not around the nair. I want to keep a relatively hard edge around the nair. It doesn't have to be too hard, but you don't need to blend it out too much. I'm really more concerned that you blend it out onto the cheekbone and that we have that area of soft curve around the bridge of the nose. I'm now going to spin Andy so I can blend his other side around the nair. And this is just a basic corrective contoured nose. Contouring the eyes is different for men and women. The man wants to do a little bit less contouring because if he contours the lid and the upper, yes. Okay. Contouring the eyes for a man and a woman is, no. I'll try it again. Men and women contour their eyes differently. For a man, the idea is just to get the lid showing as much as possible. Men tend to have a stronger lower brow bone, which will hide the eyelid. So bringing out the lid is of top importance. Women tend to do more contouring, which gives a more feminine looking eye. So right now on Andy, we're going to just focus on bringing out the lid. And then later on, Amy will join us and we'll look at how we contour the woman's eye. So we're going to start out with Andy closing his eyes. And the main idea is just to highlight the lower lid close to the lashes. And if you open your eye, Andy, for us, you can see that the eyelid is much more prominent than it was before. And this is really all you need to do to bring out the eyes. We're also going to shortly use some eyeliner just to follow the shape of the lid. But this is just about all the contouring that you need to do on the man's eye. So I'm going to take a minute to highlight his other eye. After contouring all the features with highlight and shadow, you still might need a little bit more definition to help things show up on stage. So what we're going to do is use an eyeliner pencil on Andy. And because lining the upper lid sometimes looks very feminine on a man, what we're going to do is we're going to line the lower lid. So I'm going to ask Andy to look up at the ceiling, and I'm going to very carefully draw a line of brown shadow. I'm not using black, that would be too dark. I'm using brown shadow, just following the line of his lower lid. I'm making as thin a line as possible and trying to make it as solid as possible. And now Andy can look straight ahead, and you can see that his eye is a little bit more prominent, but it doesn't really look like he's wearing eyeliner. A healthy face, even a man's, needs a little bit of color. So we're going to use a natural blush tone on Andy's face, and I'm going to use sort of a warm coral color. I'm going to tap some of it with my finger, and I'm going to first test and make sure it's not too much of it, and I'm going to get rid of a little bit of it, and then I'm going to lightly tap it across his cheekbone in a sort of horizontal manner. Just think about the sun hitting the face and how that will put a little bit of color in the cheek. We want to be very careful and very subtle on the man's face. We don't want it to look like he's wearing blush. We just want to look like he's healthy. Now this tapping helps blend, and it also keeps you from smudging the highlight and shadow that you've been so careful about applying. And so there we have a very subtle, gentle bit of color on the face, and I'm going to take a quick break to apply it on the other side. Men can apply a neutral lip color to their lips without using a liner pencil, so it doesn't look like they're wearing makeup. Now, I find that a lot of the neutral lip colors are just a little too pink for a man's natural color. So what I'm going to do for Andy is I'm taking some of his foundation and I'm mixing it with the lip color that we got in his makeup kit, and I'm mixing it on my palette. And now we have a just slightly warmer, slightly rosier color than his base. I'm going to use my brush to pick up this color. Now I'm going to apply this combination of lip color and foundation to his lips, and it just gives it a little, makes it a little darker, it gives it a little bit of rosiness, but it doesn't look like he's wearing lipstick. And I'm just going to use a tissue to clean up the edges. If you press your lips together for me, okay, and relax. And now we have just a neutral lip color, which I think is appropriate for any man. After you've finished applying your makeup, it's very important to powder it. The powder serves two purposes. One is that it helps to set the makeup so it doesn't brush off as easily. Another thing that it'll do is it will minimize the contrast of the highlight and shadow so it isn't quite so extreme and it looks a little bit more natural. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shake a little bit of powder onto this velour puff, and I'm going to now work it in, and I'm going to very carefully press it onto Andy's face. Now I'm not wiping, I'm pressing. And I just keep pressing and tapping until the powder disappears. We don't want it to look chalky, we don't want it to look powdery, but we do want it to look very matte finished. And if I keep rubbing it, I can bring more powder up from the puff. And if I need more, I'll just shake more on. and I'll just continue powdering Andy's face. You want to make sure that you powder all parts of the face, including the lips, including the eyes. Okay, now I'm gonna do that and get rid of the powder on your shirt. All right. After you've powdered, if there's still any residual left, you can use a powder brush and just very lightly wipe across, moving the powder around the face so that every area is set with the powder and that you don't have any loose powder sitting on your face. And now that we finished powdering, we're done with our basic corrective makeup.